Hello again, and we have a very fun and exciting episode of TFL Talking Trucks podcast for you because we are in a new studio.
Yeah, we've reconfigured our studio,
Yes.
which is going to be of no consequence if you're just listening. But if you're watching, that's why things look a little different.
Yes.
And Andre, what is the topic for today?
Yeah, it's exciting and really fun, not because we're in a new studio, but because we have some cool news and topics. So first of all, I want to touch on some truck news because there's a lot going on, and also what we've been doing with real-world testing
Yeah.
with some pickup trucks, and also truck innovation, right? That's one of the topics I wanted to touch on because it's a kind of a hot topic. Everybody wants more affordable pickups, but it's not clear to me that the industry is listening to the consumers.
But then again, they might be because we've got a couple quotes and a couple developments that might mean at least one or two brands are working toward trying to make some more affordable trucks, which, if you've spent any time in the comment section of any one of our truck videos, you will be very aware is something that people want more affordable trucks.
Exactly. I think all of us do.
Yeah, absolutely.
All of us agree. But sometimes we don't get what we want.
Yeah, it's a song about that.
Yes. I wonder who sang it. No, anyway. So on the screen here, if you're watching us, thank you. I'm showing a latest Kia prototype concept van. They called the Weekender. So we're going to touch on that a little bit later because I think it has some cool innovations that I haven't seen anywhere else before.
Definitely looks interesting. It looks unique. If I may, it looks prototypey. I'm not sure that
Very
that's
concepty.
in the dictionary anywhere as a word, but yeah, it doesn't look like a production vehicle, but still potentially maybe some cool features that we could pick out on it that would maybe make it into a production vehicle.
Yeah. But let's start with news.
Yeah.
And the first piece of news is not happy.
No?
Actually,
Oh, yeah.
well, no, it's not. It's
I know
not.
what you're talking about.
So Canoe is a startup company, started several years back when there was kind of a genesis of many different companies coming to market. We're talking about the period when Bollinger Automotive was starting up, Canoe, Fisker, Lordstown, even Rivian, right, and many
Yeah.
others.
Yeah, there were a lot of startups that were making big promises. Most of them had some really cool designs, Canoe included. Some of what they were proposing to do with their van and with their truck looked really intriguing, looked like it had a lot of potential, but as we know, it is very difficult to start up a car company from the ground up, even if you have a great design, even if you have a lot of investment going into the company, actually making it come to fruition, very difficult.
And they filed for bankruptcy. But that's not the saddest news.
No?
Do you know what the saddest part is?
What's worse than that?
I lost $200
Oh, well,
personally.
I'm sure there's some people out there that,
Lost more.
yeah. But yeah, so you actually had a deposit on a Canoe.
Yeah, so actually two canoes.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. Is that why it's 200? Not?
Yes.
Yeah.
So Canoe, if you don't know, so it was pretty innovative company actually. And you know what I really loved? It's like this forward control design where
Yeah.
the driver is kind of sitting near the front axle of the vehicle. They had vans, like you said, they had pickup truck versions of it. So in December of 2020, I was so excited. I put $100 on that van. And then a year and a half later, or maybe 2.5 years later, in 2023, I saw their pickup truck design, which looked really, really cool, like an original Jeep forward control. I put another $100 down.
Yeah, and it wasn't, like you're saying, married to a conventional design. So because this is sitting on an EV architecture, or that was the plan for it anyway, they kind of rethought how they wanted to use that space. And if I'm not mistaken, I think that you actually rode in a prototype, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. This was in Indianapolis. There was a van, very cool experience. That video was hugely popular.
Yeah.
And let me see, I'm trying to pull up a pickup truck version of the, yeah, here it is, a Canoe pickup truck. How cool is this? Amazing, right, dude?
Yeah, and say what you want to about the looks of it and the proportions, but it was a really interesting design, innovative, definitely kind of threw convention aside. So it was something that we were really excited to see and test, and that we definitely wanted to come to fruition.
Yeah, and actually, um, over the years, TFL and me personally, and I think some other team members here at TFL, we've actually reserved different vehicles,
Yeah.
because we get excited, we want to be first to test them out. So I mean, yes, I'm a little sore about my $200, but I think it's all good
Yeah.
in the end.
Yeah. I guess I don't want to completely gloss over you $200. I would also be bummed out if I lost $200. So.
There you have it.
Yeah, so that's one of the bigger pieces of news that we wanted to talk about today. And I'm sure we're going to hear a little bit more about the ins and outs of what exactly happened over at Canoe. But for now, yeah, we can confirm that.
Yeah, Chapter 7, they filed bankruptcy. So basically, not like a reorganization, but actually kind of like a goodbye.
Yeah, which is unfortunate.
So, also, what's happening this weekend, as we're talking about this, is Barrett Jackson's Scottsdale auction.
On a happier note,
Yeah, a little bit happier.
we like buying stuff.
Yeah, and we like selling stuff. I like going to auctions.
I don't like selling stuff that much, but I do like buying stuff.
This is not brought to you by Better Jackson or anything like this.
No.
I used to go every year. We're not there in person this year, but the reason why I used to go is because my wife's family, they have a home in Scottsdale, which is right next door to this auction. And in January, it's nice and pleasant. The weather is very nice, and you could see a lot of cool pickup trucks and vehicles in general. And we had one of the vehicles we used to own go on sale, which was our 65 Ford F100 electric conversion. Chargezilla. We also called it E100, but I also have some bad news.
Yeah?
Well, the good news is that it's sold.
Yeah.
It brought $16,500. That's partially bad news because we really wanted as much as possible. We wanted more out of it.
Yeah, and it was quite an ambitious project, and quite a few different companies helped us bring it together. To start with, it was a farm truck, a true farm truck. It wasn't some completely pristine, preserved factory original vehicle. In fact, it was an interesting combination of parts because it seems like that truck in its history had been pieced together with a combination of F250 parts.
Yeah. Like, for example, the transfer case was like from a heavier version truck.
Yeah.
It basically had a high boy orientation, which means you had a divorce transfer case in the middle of the truck and equal length drive shafts. It had a really kind of heavy duty straight six.
Yeah,
engine.
300 inline six, which is a pretty iconic and very robust engine.
Yeah. And,
not powerful, but
not very
robust.
powerful. And it had like heavy duty springs. It had a F100 cab, heavier bed. So it was kind of a conglomeration of different parts, but nonetheless, it has a lot of charm.
Yeah.
And we don't know exactly who bought it. Hopefully, it went to a good home. And the proceeds from the sale, Legacy EV, which is our partner in this, is going to donate towards scholarships for new mechanics and technicians who want to study electric vehicles.
Yeah, which is really cool. And that was kind of the cool thing about this project is learning more about what it takes to swap a powertrain over to a more modern electric powertrain like what this now has in it. And that's a big part of the reason that we would have loved to see even more money go into this, because it's going to a good place. And we gave the truck away. We didn't get
we donated the truck.
Yeah,
Yes.
we didn't get any proceeds from the sale of it. So it was a cool and, again, very ambitious project.
Yeah, and we learned a lot. It was a heavy lift for everybody involved.
Yeah.
101 Motors, which is basically a build shop in Arizona near Phoenix. They invested all the labor, basically, most of the labor on this project. Legacy EV invested their parts. Fox invested time into the suspension and the parts there, BF Goodrich. So this partly sad thing is that it didn't bring more money like we really, really hoped.
Yeah.
But And the other reason why I say this is because you and I are currently involved in V8 swapping some project vehicles
Yeah, well, separately,
separately.
you've got
You,
one, I've got one.
yeah, and this is not really sanctioned by TFL. You know, you're working kind of on your own. I
Yeah,
was working on my own.
you're doing a much better job of filming yours than I am.
Well, I did film mine because Roman agreed, to publish the Buhanka,
Yeah,
the Soviet 4x4
I've
van
got about 3 minutes
project.
worth of footage because working on the vehicle itself is already a lot of work. Trying to film working on a vehicle makes it even more
Yes.
work. And for me, at least, this is something I'm doing in my own free time.
Yeah.
Uh,
And David helped out in a huge way for me
yeah,
because David was like the leading builder on the project. And I gotta tell you, dude, the good news from the auction is that a lot of V8 swaps and custom trucks are really bringing high values. Look at this: $75,900 for a 1967 F100 V8 restoration.
yeah. So it definitely seems like if you want to call it a resto mod, that's popular.
Yeah.
Whatever you want to call it, V8 swapped vehicles are popular. They have been popular for a while. It's not like we're first
No, no,
on this
no.
train of swapping GM V8s
Into
into
other vehicles.
other vehicles.
Yeah.
But it definitely still seems to be something that people are into and that people are looking for.
And in a big way, I think this Barrett Jackson auction that's happening right now is a sign that there's still a lot of strength in customizing, um, resto modding, V8 swapping, even like Fords with Chevy V8s bringing a lot of money. So
Yeah.
it's just about the experience of it. But apparently, electric swaps are not as hot as we
Yeah.
found out.
Yeah. Which I could understand.
I wanted we're switching gears just a little bit. I wanted to talk about some of the stuff we've recently done ourselves as far as testing is concerned. And you and I and Tommy and Jen, we went out to an off-road park near Colorado Springs, and we put our Chevy Silverado heavy duty Trail Boss to the test.
Yeah, so this is a new trim for the Silverado HD, having the Trail Boss. It's something that we wanted to test out. It is not the most off-road worthy Silverado HD, if you want to call it that. It's kind of a more mid-level trim that makes it a little bit more rugged. So the truck has KO3s, which is nice, but still a big wheel. What, a 20-inch wheel?
Yeah, not a lot of sidewall on this tire, but the tire itself, the KO3, is quite good as far as grip is concerned.
Yeah, and the truck also doesn't have any low-hanging side steps or anything, so it's got a few things going for it. We took it to this off-road park. It's an off-road park called Ram Off-Road Park. They're in Colorado Springs, so they're a little bit south of where we are here in Boulder, where our office is located. But they've got a lot of really cool terrain that you can take vehicles of really any different capability level all the way up to. You could probably find some stuff that would challenge even side by sides, and
And
I don't
some
know
rock
if,
crawlers.
yeah, I don't know if you would necessarily challenge in a huge way like an Ultra 4 rig, but there's some pretty difficult stuff there. We brought this truck through as much of it as we could.
Yeah, and here's the thing about off-roading a heavy-duty pickup truck. It's really huge and heavy, right? So yes, we kind of showed, I think we showed that it's very capable, but
Yeah,
it's kind of challenging. First of all, making some of the maneuvers, lining up or maybe rounding a corner, lining up for an obstacle, that's very challenging. This truck has a 160-inch wheelbase, which is pretty huge. And it's also wide and it weighs over 8,000 pounds.
yeah. So that became one of the limiting factors on some of the steeper climbs, especially up kind of an undercut rock ledge for this truck, was having enough traction to get that heavy front end with a big Duramax diesel sitting over that front axle
Yes.
to climb up this rock ledge. Difficult thing to do on a truck that's that heavy, to find the traction that you need to be able to do that. Um, to your point, the truck is tall. It's got a fair amount of clearance under it.
Yeah.
So there's quite a few things that you can drive over. But it's a long truck. The maneuvering isn't easy, and I think the weight becomes a factor for a lot of obstacles.
And it has good articulation too. I mean, the rear solid axle articulates quite well. And because the chassis is so long, I felt I was driving and for this particular test, I felt a little bit more confident that I'm not gonna like tip in some weird way because it's kind of a big and stable chassis. But we found out that this Trail Boss package, well, actually, this is a long-term test truck. Does cost $3,400, and I'm not so sure because it's got some cosmetic things going on with like a blacked out grill, red tow hooks, blacked out bumpers. I'm not so sure that's really worth $3,400
Yeah,
just overall.
$3,000 is quite a bit of money. Look at that, we we lost our lights.
Yes.
Our video guy, producer Cole in the background is going to help us out with that.
Well, this is a new studio.
Yeah, we're figuring it out.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's a surprise to anyone necessarily that a big HD truck like this is not going to be the best rock crawler that's out there on the market, period. We never expected it to be. This is still primarily a towing rig, but it does say Trail Boss on the side of it, so we had to test out how well it does at least some light to medium off-roading.
Yeah, and the good thing is those KO3s held up. You know, they were pretty good. We
Tires are great.
We're aired down a little bit. We used our Thor's Lightning air down kit and compressor. So that was quite good. I do wish it was a smaller wheels diameter and a more tire diameter.
Yeah, and I also wish that the spokes of the wheels on the Trail Boss weren't so exposed because especially as wide as that truck is, I think if you do run even a fair amount of light trails, you're going to scuff up those wheels because the face of the wheel sticks out quite a bit compared to the sidewall of the tire.
We did something else. We pulled a trailer weighing about 4,000 pounds with our new 2025 Ford Maverick. So we took a heavy-duty truck off-road, which is not the element that the off-road truck really liked. And we also pulled a heavy trailer at the steepest interstate in the country with a little tiny compact truck.
Well, this is what we do because trucks are supposed to do a combination of at least a little bit of all these different things, right? That's kind of the expectation. And so we like to test the extremes of every one of those situations. So how well can this off-road kind of rugged trim of an HD truck hit a trail? How well does it do doing that? How well does a compact hybrid truck like the Maverick do pulling a trailer up a steep and high elevation hill?
Yeah, so we took it on the I-Gauntlet, which is basically Eisenhower Johnson tunnels on the I-70 here in Colorado. So high elevation, 11,158 feet above sea level, 7% grade, 8-mile stretch. We've been running this stretch of highway for last 12 years with different pickup trucks. And actually, there's another reality series out there now. I think it's called Rocky Mountain Recovery. I think our producer...
He's not sure either, but
anyways,
that sounds right.
It's about recovering, accidents happen, specifically in the wintertime because ice, snow, different weird conditions, wind. And they called it the most dangerous stretch of highway or interstate.
Yeah,
so
which I buy. Accidents happen on any icy road anywhere in the country, but they especially happen on this stretch of I-70. And if you need proof, look no further than there's a page on Instagram called I-70 Things, and you'll see a lot of ridiculousness happening on that page.
Yeah,
people take videos of cars getting stuck and semi-trucks sliding sideways.
Convertibles with their top down in the winter.
Some of it's kind of funny. Some of it is honestly very serious because this is a genuinely dangerous stretch of highway. And that's where we tested the Maverick with the maximum that it's rated to tow. So this Maverick Hybrid all-wheel drive is rated to tow 4,000 pounds, which I think we're pretty happy with.
Yeah, I mean, it's enough. I mean, we're using this Aluma trailer, which is a tandem axle, dual axle trailer, which, because it's aluminum, it's very lightweight.
Yeah, even though it's a big trailer.
It's a big trailer. It's got a 20-foot deck. We put our Honda Acti K-Truck on top of it. So we're actually doing some useful work. I mean, the K-Truck is not really road legal.
Yeah.
So if you want to move a piece of equipment around, Maverick like this can do it.
Yeah, or say if you had maybe a side-by-side that you wanted to bring to a trailhead, that would be a reasonable thing to place behind the Maverick here. And I think we were both pretty impressed with how the Maverick performed both on the downhill as far as brake applications is concerned, and also on the uphill just in its ability to maintain the speed limit.
Yeah, we were a little bit below 60 miles an hour on the way up. So 191 horsepower from this hybrid system maybe is not quite enough to climb the steepest grades.
Yeah.
But on the downhill, it was superbly impressive. It seemed like the regen feature, it was basically recouping energy on the way down.
Yeah.
It helped us control the trailer. It was very comfortable, very, very nice. So it was quite surprising,
Yeah.
actually.
It behaved well for a unibody vehicle. It was also, the hitch wasn't particularly loud in the cabin. What was loud in the cabin was going uphill with a CVT. The motor was revved up pretty much the whole time, so there was a lot of drone from the inside of the Maverick, but it nearly maintained the speed limit the entire time. And I think that that is pretty impressive for a vehicle that is primarily designed to get 40 miles per gallon in the city and is a hybrid and it's all-wheel drive and it's meant to drive very car-like, be easy to drive, fit in parking spaces, be a good daily driver. The fact that it can do all of that and still pull a 4,000-pound trailer effectively, not at a speed that's so slow that it's dangerous.
Yeah.
It can pull that trailer effectively up that steep of a grade at that elevation where technically Ford would actually recommend you derate its maximum tow rating.
Yeah.
It's for every...
Well, on
what's the
a
number?
lot of their turbocharged engines and trucks, they say like 2% of gross combined weight for every 1,000 feet of elevation.
Above sea level, yeah.
So at 11,000 feet of elevation, that's a considerable amount of derate on that capacity.
Yeah, but we still pulled
Yeah,
4,000 pounds, what it's supposed to be rated to tow
Yeah.
at sea level anyway, and it did it. So I'm pretty impressed. It's
Exactly.
not perfect.
So anywhere else in the country, I mean, lower elevation, flat highways, this should be a nice little pickup truck, which brings me to our next point, which is small trucks are very popular right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and there's another company that doesn't have any mid-size or small trucks.
But they want to.
They want to have one.
Yeah, so we're talking about Ram trucks. And recently, Tim Kuniskis rejoined Stellantis as CEO of Ram Trucks. And he went on the record saying that he feels that the brand is not a true truck brand until they have a competitor, someone to go up the box for them in the midsize segment.
Yes, he specifically mentioned the midsize segment. The only thing that we can really show effectively here is their compact truck from Brazil, which is currently on sale there, and that's the Ram Rampage. They also have some trucks like on sale, little trucks in Mexico, for example, and some other markets. They call them different things. Sometimes they call it Ram 1000, Ram 1200. There's some Fiat versions of those. But nonetheless, here in the United States, the midsize segment is growing still, and we showed that with data.
Yeah.
And Ram needs to participate, we think.
And who knows, maybe even at some point the Rampage could come into the US market and fight its way up the ranks against maybe the Maverick and the Santa Cruz.
Exactly. Unfortunately, the latest news, which was also confirmed by the UAW, United Auto Workers Union, is that the Belvidere plant in Illinois will produce this midsize truck for Ram, but starting in 2027. So this is not going to happen this year or next year. Dude, I think they're missing out some competitive advantage by effectively delaying it. I know they're not doing it on purpose. Necessarily,
for sure.
But the fact that they're waiting that long to develop it, I think is not so good.
Yeah, so as kind of a recap, the Ram Rampage is a compact truck they make elsewhere. Maybe they could bring that to the States. But what we do know for sure is that they are fighting to bring out a midsize truck. And it sounds like 2027 would be the earliest that we would see it. And I understand your hesitation with that because there's already a lot of very popular midsize trucks that have just been updated on the market. It's a huge segment. It's a competitive segment. And the longer you wait, it's not going to help you out any.
Yeah.
But that being said, to properly develop a new vehicle, even if you're using an existing platform, even if they were to build their new midsize truck out of something like the Gladiator platform, which is possible, you could update the powertrain, give it a new body, change up the suspension, maybe even move away from solid front axle. Who knows? Who knows what they're going to do? Only they do. But it is still a while to wait until 2027. But I just don't, there's not any way around that. From what we've seen, quotes from Tim Kuniskis, it seems like they want to get that going as soon as possible. I mean, the direct quote from him is, "I desperately need a midsize truck because everything is so expensive." They also mentioned the fact that they do still have the name Dakota. So we could see the Dodge Dakota
It could be named that.
come back. I mean, I guess it likely wouldn't be a Dodge Dakota.
No, it would be like a Ram Dakota, which is fine. As long as they put an American flag in the tail lamp, I think we all will agree that that's cool. If you're watching us on TFL Talk channel and not just listening to us, the Rampage pickup in Brazil has a unique tail lamp design, and it almost resembles an American flag.
Which makes you wonder why that tail light isn't over here as well.
Come on, Ram. Yeah. Please bring it over. Jeez. All right. So shifting gears towards a little bit towards innovation, right? We talked about Ram trucks, but now just in general, what are some of the trends? I want to start with Jeep. You mentioned Jeep Gladiator briefly. I want to mention they've been talking about a plug-in version of the Jeep Gladiator.
Yeah.
So the Wrangler 4xe has been on sale, for several years.
Yeah, and the Grand Cherokee 4xe.
Right. And with pretty good success. I mean, it's been very popular. They've had a couple of recalls, and specific a recall that has to do with the battery system. So that's been kind of unfortunate.
Yeah, that was some of the more recent news with the 4xe. There were potential fire risks, and so they were telling people not to plug in and charge
it up. Yeah.
Yeah, the battery portion of their vehicle, so you can still drive it around basically as just a normal 2-liter powered Jeep.
Hybrid, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. But they've talked about a plug-in version of the Gladiator pickup truck. They said it may come at the end of 2025, which is this year now.
Yeah.
We still don't have a lot of solid information. I was just listening to our friends at Wheel Bearings podcast, Sam, Nicole, and Roberto. Sam and Nicole were at the Detroit Auto Show, and they had a chance to interview some of the CEOs and executives. They talked to the executive at Jeep. They talked about how the Jeep is about fun, it's about affordability, it's about adventure, but they still never mentioned the Gladiator plugin. So it's still at least several months away, or maybe they haven't decided what happens.
Yeah, and this is purely a matter of opinion on my part, but I'm not sure whether them adding a 4xe option to the Gladiator is going to fix the decline in sales that the Gladiator saw year over year from the sales data that we've gotten most recently.
Yeah.
The Gladiator has struggled a little bit, understandably, because like we mentioned, there's been a lot of new midsize trucks on the market, so a ton of really stiff competition. I think updating the powertrain on the Gladiator could help potentially, because that would give you some new offering out there on the market, at least something a little different for people who want a plug-in hybrid. But I feel like ultimately Stellantis is going to have to do something a little bit more dramatic, a little bit more extensive to really compete in the midsize truck space, and that's probably going to be the Dakota.
I agree, and also adding a plug-in hybrid system with a battery and a charge port and all this stuff to the Gladiator is not going to lower its cost.
No.
It's going to increase its cost. And it may affect its payload. It may affect its capability in some interesting ways because you're adding weight to the system. So I really don't see that as a super positive. But what Gladiator has going for it, it's topless. I mean, you can remove the top.
And the doors.
And the doors. And that's the ultimate adventure vehicle, right? I mean,
and it has a solid front axle, which in this day and age is very, very difficult to find. There are only a handful.
Maybe three.
Well, as far as pickup trucks,
Yes.
So there's the Chevy HD and the Ram HD, solid front axles. There's a Gladiator.
No, you meant Ford HD.
Sorry, Ford, not Chevy. The Chevy HD,
Ford and
the Ram HD.
There's
the Gladiator.
Ineos.
Yeah, the Grenadier.
Grenadier Truck, Quartermaster front solid
Yeah.
axle.
There's no full sizes that
No,
have a
no.
solid front
And the
axle.
Jeep. Yeah. So
Yeah.
there's four
So
really.
two of the three HDs, the Ineos and
Yeah.
the Gladiator.
So really, I mean, they have a lot going for it. I think where maybe they went wrong a little bit and was really pricing it super, super high, right? If you looked about a year or two ago, they had different versions. They also had the Eco Diesel version of it and special editions, and some of them were going for over $70,000 sticker price. And I think that shocked some of the consumers. I mean, it was shocking to me, walking in and seeing a midsize truck at $70,000. So I think they really need to work on pushing those prices
Yeah.
down.
I do think if they could update the powertrain in a way that is actually motivating to buyers, that would make a big difference because the Pentastar feels it works. It's fine. It
Yeah.
doesn't feel like a very modern powertrain. So it would be nice to do maybe something a little different there. And then if they could make it look and feel a little bit different, I don't hate the interior or the exterior of the Gladiator, but I'd also think it could benefit from a more significant update than what we've seen more recently.
And it's also a little bit larger than the Tacoma. I mean, it's kind
Yeah,
of
it's
got a
long.
longer wheelbase, so it's already not almost a midsize truck. It has grown.
Knocking on the door.
It's a knocking on the door of the Rivians and the full sizers out there. So that's quite interesting. So let's use this to kind of talk a little bit more about innovation. At the beginning of the episode, I mentioned Kia. This was at SEMA 2024. And it really stood out to me because for a couple of reasons. First of all, it was also the like forward control, very compact design, also all electric. But it doesn't have to be all electric. I mean, it is in this case, but it had a couple of interesting things. First of all, it had a tent built in the roof, which we've seen before from many manufacturers, so that wasn't really innovative. But it had a portion of the side of the on the driver's side, which kind of slid out like a drawer. So basically, it was like a slide out on a motorhome. So it actually made the interior larger by sliding out, and they created a little like a doorway where you could kind of put your shoes there and enter the cabin through. They also had a winch and a screen inside the front bumper. Partially, that screen, the information it was showing was the pull strength of the winch itself.
Which is cool in theory. It'd be a bummer to take a rock chip into that screen. I'm sure they could protect the screen pretty well. I've got a screen protector on my phone. But yeah, there's some interesting ideas that they're talking about. I think you brought up a good point that it doesn't have to be electric. And I actually think it would probably benefit from not being fully electric, if nothing else, based on the feedback that we've seen from people around the new Scout vehicles, the truck and SUV.
Which are electric based, but also can be range extended.
Yeah, it seems like even probably a majority of people would opt for that range extender model and are motivated by the Scouts because of the fact that they have that range extender versus another EV, versus like a Rivian.
Exactly. And we saw that in the reservations when the Scout was announced. 80+%, I want to say 82 or 83% of reservations were for the range extender, not the base electric vehicle. But what the electricity does for you, at least in this Kia concept, is that it gives you freedom of design, right? Because the battery can be in the floor, the electric motors can be compact, and they're hidden maybe inside the wheels, actually, or maybe just inside the axles, or just low in the vehicle. And that gives the designer the freedom to push the cabin forward, to have lots of space. You could, have lunch inside or whatever you want to do.
And for a range extender, there's a lot of different options for where you could place that if you wanted to integrate that into the design. I think I'm still talking about Scouts in my head. I think one of the cool things about the Scout design is the fact that they kept it traditional in a lot of ways, with the frame with a solid rear axle. It's body on frame, it's solid rear axle. They did some really that's really cool. That's new. That's innovative as far as a vehicle that is also electrified. but gave it that range extender. So they're kind of using the best of both worlds, the best of the old school and the best of the new school, try and combine them into something that actually has a lot of really broad appeal to maybe people that never considered an electrified vehicle before this. So I think if more companies in the future can do something like that, that would be really impactful.
Yeah. So I was at the Los Angeles Auto Show last year, just a couple months ago, and I saw the chassis, basically the frame of the new Ram Charger. I
Yeah.
almost said Rev.
Yeah.
Ram Charger is their electric range extended vehicle, and they only had the original frame. Granted, this is not the latest design. This was the frame they showed like a couple years prior,
Sure.
and it was at the show, but it looked very complex.
Yeah. That's fair.
So they're using a V6 engine in that frame as a generator, and it's underneath the hood in the front. Then underneath that V6, there was an electric motor. Then there was a battery. Then there was a fuel tank because the gasoline generator needs some fuel. The fuel tank was quite large. Then there's an electric motor in the back. And between all of that, there was hoses, pipes, electrical connections, coolers, radiators. It just looked very, very complex.
It's true. In a way, you have also the worst of both worlds because you have the complexity of both powertrains in one vehicle. But if I could play devil's advocate, I would also say if I laid out the wiring harness for any brand new vehicle, you or I or people who are even quite a bit more mechanically inclined than we are,
Yeah.
trying to diagnose an issue in the electronics on any brand new vehicle is going to be hard to do. So I agree with you. It's definitely a more complicated powertrain than just a traditional gas engine or even just a basic big battery and electric motors individually. But most modern vehicles are pretty complicated to begin with. So I don't know if that necessarily needs to be a huge buying factor for people that are going to get a vehicle brand new. If you're going to buy it brand new, most modern cars are pretty solid. And if you buy a new car every 5 years, every 8 years, every 10, 12 years, whatever, then I don't know that that complexity is necessarily going to be a complete showstopper.
Yeah, and I want to mention like what is driving this stuff, right? Because I don't know. I mean, you and I as consumers and a lot of people listening, we're not asking for complexity. Like we're not like raising our hands and say,
Could
let's
you
make
please make it more complicated?
yeah, like can you make
Yeah.
the complexity of this thing through the roof? We're not asking for that. So in our notes in our show notes here, actually I listed government regulations as probably the primary driver because there is drivers of emissions controls, right? There's drivers of safety. So it's easy for you and I to build, our project in our garage, but is it going to pass all of the latest stringent testing?
Mine's not going to pass any testing.
No, I'm talking about like crash protection, crash
Yeah.
worthiness, emissions. I mean, you and I are not building, these black smoke spewing machines.
No, they're not ridiculous. Mine has an airbag.
My Buhanka does not have airbags, but
Actually, two.
I'm doing an exhaust system with catalytic converters,
Yeah.
with mufflers. We have software to run all that engine in the most efficient way possible.
Yeah,
So-
yeah, for sure.
But still, we would not pass all the latest regulations.
No.
So that's a huge driving factor,
It is.
which also drives the complexity and the cost
Yeah.
of a lot of these vehicles.
For sure. But, whether or not people want to admit it, also what consumers are looking for drives some of the complexity that's introduced into modern vehicles now. Because if you boil down a vehicle to the most repairable machine possible, which I think a lot of people might think they want, but I doubt you really do, because we actually own one of the most repairable vehicles on the planet. It's a Ford Model T. Tommy and I did a head gasket on our Model T in about 30 minutes.
Whoa.
It was great. It was really easy.
Yeah.
But I bet the majority of you out there aren't driving Model Ts, even though you can get them.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. You can find them. They're not that expensive, but because it's such a simple vehicle, that does make it easy to repair. That also makes it not that easy to live with. So I think there's a certain amount of complexity in modern vehicles that is just kind of required by the expectations that we have for vehicles now, as far as comfort, performance, connectivity, whatever you want to jot down.
So I was at the party last weekend, and we were talking just as a group, not automotive people, just in general. And somebody said, we're talking about cars and trucks. And somebody said, you know what? I will never buy another new vehicle without a reverse camera. Like a reverse camera, first of all, you can't because it's regulated now.
Yeah, it's
But
required.
it's actually a helpful feature.
It is. It's
You
great.
know, when you have a large vehicle, and it doesn't have to be huge. I mean, if you have a station wagon, a crossover, SUV, you're backing out of your Trader Joe parking lot, it's very tight. You want to see what's happening behind you. So, is there a child pushing a grocery cart? People are like loving that tech, right? Cameras are very useful for that.
Yeah.
Which is cool.
Yeah, and so there's definitely a lot of ways in which modern vehicles are, with all this innovation, are becoming more complicated, and I think it's a pain point for a lot of people, which I can understand because I've got a lot of '90s vehicles, which for me is kind of a sweet spot because I think a lot of '90s vehicles drive modernly enough. That makes sense grammatically.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Yeah, but there's still things that you can work on yourself. So I think it's kind of a good compromise for me personally. But yeah, I mean, there's complexity even going back in vehicles back to the '70s. If you were to pop the hood on my 1973 Mercedes and pull the air cleaner off and look at the spaghetti bowl of vacuum lines under the hood of that, or try and wrap
Or
your
even
head
the
around.
'84 Civic that we had.
Yeah, a lot of vacuum lines
Yeah.
on that. If you were to try and wrap your head around the fuel injection system on my '73 Mercedes, you'd go crazy.
Okay, but that's crazy.
You'd end up in a straitjacket.
But that's German. That's
Yeah.
a German way.
That's fair. But, complexity in vehicles that makes them hard to repair is not necessarily a new thing.
No, it's not.
But the innovation does keep bringing us more capable, more efficient, for the most part, and more comfortable vehicles than we've ever had in the past. So I think it's overall a good thing. I still love old vehicles. That's most of what I have. But I don't want to be totally doom and gloom about some of this complexity that's coming into vehicles. I don't even know if that was a topic you were trying to talk about. But
It is.
Yeah?
It is.
Cool.
I'm loving this. I just brought up another page here on the browser about some of the investment General Motors is doing. Both of you and I are using GM motors to swap into older vehicles. They're apparently putting as far as $854 million into the next generation V8 engines, except we still don't know anything about it.
That's the right kind of investment, though.
That's a
Investment
lot of
into V8s.
dollars.
Because I feel like there's also been a lot of doom and gloom over the last, whatever you want to call it, 10, 15 years, whatever. Going back as far as Ford started switching to EcoBoosts away from V8s. Been a lot of doom and gloom about the V8's going to go away. It's going to go extinct. $854 million of GM's money is saying...
It's going against it.
Yeah, that the V8's not going away.
Yeah.
So that's great to see.
I really want to see some fruits of this labor because we know, they've sold... Recent news came out a few months ago, something like 120 million V8 engines over the last 75 years plus. I mean, that's a lot of know-how. And if they can make them, I don't know, maybe even smaller, more efficient, maybe slightly hybridized, maybe interacting with an electric motor somehow. For example, their Corvette E-Ray, perfect example.
Yeah.
Yes, it's quite complex, but it's got a big V8 with an electric motor, it's all-wheel drive, and it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and they work together so that you still have your big V8, but maybe if you're sitting there at a stoplight or just pulling away from the stoplight or just putting along maintaining speed, maybe that big V8 doesn't need to be running until you need it, until you want it. Then you can actively switch it on and enjoy that V8 experience, but then save some money when you don't strictly needed. And we've seen that V8s can be plenty efficient because we've done testing with Coyote powered F-150s against EcoBoost powered F-150s, running the same 10-speed transmission. And with that 10-speed transmission, depending on what kind of testing you're doing, really the V8 is not
Almost the same.
significantly worse.
No,
Yeah.
it's the same in some instances.
Same thing with the Hemi-powered Rams versus the new Hurricanes. As far as fuel economy is concerned, there's not really a strict need to walk away from V8s,
Exactly. I mean,
which is nice.
it is nice. What turbocharging brings to the table is just kind of effortless torque. It feels effortless. Like we recently tested the Ranger Raptor with a trailer, and the way it accelerates just feels effortless. If you had a naturally aspirated V8, especially in the mountains where we live, you have high revs. The engine has to rev up quite high in order to accomplish similar acceleration. So that's what turbocharging brings. But on the flip side, if you can have a V8, you can have that experience. Maybe fill in a little bit of torque with electricity potentially. That could be a very, very exciting proposition. And I'm hoping, and maybe not very expensive either.
Yeah, and a really nice compromise that could benefit the consumer in a big way. And again, I mean, we're still talking about a powertrain. If you're combining even a relatively mild hybrid system to a V8, you're still going to have a lot more complexity than you would with just a V8 and an 8 or 10-speed automatic transmission. But you'd also reap a lot of benefits from it potentially as far as fuel economy and how much money you're going to spend on that. So it'll be interesting to see where it goes.
Yeah, and the same thing is happening in the heavy-duty pickup truck market as well. I just brought up a story from a while ago, from about a year ago, where there was a rumor about like a very, very larger displacement Duramax V8 diesel for their heavy-duty pickup trucks. We still don't have any other news to add to this.
Yeah.
But I think it's pretty clear that within a year or two from now, there's going to be a lot of other development happening in those engines. Maybe they have to be bigger displacement because of emissions. So we'll have to wait and see how that works. But I want to mention Ram and Cummins because the new Cummins is coming out on sale imminently, like within the next couple of months.
Yeah, we've already gotten confirmed details all about the new truck, which if you want to see, we've got a dedicated video for that. So we know what it is that's going to be coming, and very soon we should be able to drive it.
Yeah, but what I really like what Ram and Cummins are doing is because up to now, I feel like there was like this war about power and torque. I have more, you have more, I have more, you have more. But, Cummins said, you know what? 430 horsepower in a heavy-duty diesel is good. That's their rating. 1,075 pound-feet of torque is good. They're using a new transmission. They're using other elements of the vehicle to make it perform. So I'm really glad that it's no longer a power war, so to say. You see what I'm saying?
I guess.
It's more because if they said, here's our new Cummins, it has 550 horsepower, but in order to do that, you have to pay another $5,000 for that engine. We would say, okay, yes, but it keeps driving the price higher and higher and higher.
That's a fair point. There's, I guess, a war between bragging rights and between affordability. I love the fact that Ford has a high output power stroke with 500 horsepower and 1,200 pound-feet of torque. That's just cool.
Yeah.
And it makes me want one. I couldn't afford one because that's what, a $12,000 option for the high output?
$12,500.
Which is a lot of money. And already just the next generation Cummins is only going to have one diesel option. There's not going to be a standard output and a high output.
Right.
And just the standard Cummins is more like 12? Is that right?
Oh, you mean in 2025, the new one?
Yeah, when they come around.
Yeah, they're all going to be 12.5.
Yeah, just to opt for a diesel. So if they did have some high output version of that was even more expensive. How expensive would it be?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
it would be expensive.
I can understand your point, and maybe the horsepower and torque wars are plateauing a little bit. At this point, it's only the Duramax that's under 1,000 pound-feet of torque at 975 pound-feet of torque. And our ongoing joke is, how does it even drive uphill?
Yeah, with
Look,
only 975.
Which is a joke because 975 pound-feet of
Is a
torque is
lot.
still a ridiculous amount of torque, even going back 5-10 years. That's a ton of horsepower and torque. The Duramax does have more horsepower, 470, than the new Cummins is going to have at 430, but less torque. So that's kind of in the weeds about that. I can get what you're saying, that maybe trying to keep the price down is more important than having all these headline power and torque figures.
Yeah, I mean, it's more about like the work you can do, right? If they focus more on payload,
Yeah.
bed design, we can talk about like different tailgate designs, which recently have come about.
Yeah. I did get a little excited when you said Cummins with 550 horsepower.
I saw you jump up a little bit.
I thought, that sounds nice.
Noise.
That sounds real nice.
Well, yeah. Well, you could always tune it up yourself, I guess.
That's true.
Although
theoretically,
it's becoming more and more difficult, right?
it is. Yeah. That's why I've got an old truck.
Yeah, because I mean, as soon as you start touching computers or systems, in order to comply with all the regulations and everything that has to do with it, and then doing emissions testing, those are huge challenges.
Which, to your point, might be a reason that some of these big diesels in the HD trucks end up getting bigger displacement than they are now, because squeezing a certain amount of horsepower and torque out of a given displacement gets harder and harder the more power you're trying to squeeze out of a 6.6 or a 6.7. So maybe if they went to an even bigger displacement engine, it would be less of a big ask for that huge displacement engine to make whatever power goal
Yeah.
you're trying to make while staying within some margin for emissions.
All right, we got to talk about screens, because I think you and I, when we were kind of preparing for this episode, one thing that came up was passenger side screens for everybody. Every person gets a screen.
Yeah.
But what's up with
Or
that?
like you were showing a screen in the bumper.
A screen in the bumper. More screens.
I think it's maybe a fundamental. I could be wrong here. This could just be me, but to me, it feels like adding screens on screens is a fundamental misunderstanding, especially in the truck category, of what it is that people want. Not to say that we want to go back to the double din radio that's in my second gen Cummins,
Okay.
but I think we have screens enough, and we have had screens enough for a while. I even wouldn't hate it if they went back to some nice quality, nice looking analog gauges in the instrument cluster and just kept a reasonable size screen in the center that has Apple CarPlay, because Apple CarPlay is nice, I think, or
I
Android
think we
Auto,
all
whatever
agree,
you've
yeah.
got.
Yeah.
I think most people appreciate that as a feature. So if I'm buying a brand new vehicle, I'd like to have Apple CarPlay. But even in the center display, your instrument cluster, I don't need that to be a screen.
And there's also this drive towards fewer knobs and fewer buttons. Like Tesla has been pushing that for many, many years.
Yep.
And removing buttons and
Which
I
is
think,
not our favorite either.
No, it's not our favorite at all. And also, we can see like Scout going back to knobs and some buttons. So I think
They're
was
satisfying to use
exactly, and also
easy to use.
Easy to use. Like when you're bouncing off road, it's really hard to point on the screen, and select a feature. And also passenger side screens, like in the Rams, they're putting it kind of above the glove box here for the passenger. First of all, they use like piano black, gloss black trim, so it's very reflective.
Yeah.
So sometimes you would get like a reflection of sun like in your eye as you're kind of sitting there. It's also hard to see. I don't know.
And this, for me, also brings up an earlier point, a point that we were just now talking about. If you're going to save money by making a diesel option that has less horsepower than one of the trucks like the high output Power Strokes that are already around, but you're still going to put a screen on the top of the glove box, I would rather you leave out the screen over the glove box and give me the more power. So this does not feel like a move toward cost cutting. Putting a screen
No,
on that
no,
feels
it's not.
that to me feels very.
But I think. Oh, so
It's like it's gluttonous.
well, yes,
Because
but
to me it feels like a little bit of a gimmicky feature. Not to say that that screen can't possibly be useful. I think it can, but I think we could also get by without it. So
I agree.
yeah,
But I
not a-
think it points to a trend where the pickup truck is no longer a work vehicle. It's now a luxury family hauler. That's kind of where the transition has happened over the last couple decades, for
yeah,
sure. And because people, use it as an office. Sometimes people just go long distances in it. People work out of it. People go on vacations in it. People tow their boats and their horses to events, lakes. So I think that's the trend where I don't know what's the right mix though. I mean,
yeah.
it's nice to sit in a very comfortable seat, have a place to put your laptop, maybe to charge your laptop. All those things are great, but I think it has to be a right balance.
Yeah, and I think give me a luxury option for a pickup truck. Why not? I'd love to have a nice stitched leather steering wheel and AC system that works really well. And sure, well, a heated steering wheel and heated
Heated
seats.
seats, yeah.
That's all nice stuff to have. Uh, but to me, luxury and more screens is not a direct correlation. And I'm not going to blame that on Ram or any particular manufacturer because it's happening across the board. There's plenty of luxury cars we see where they come out with a new model from whatever luxury brand. And one of their big new features is that it's just one big flat screen TV all the way across the dash.
Yes.
And not not to sound like a grumpy old guy, which I think I'm pretty far off of, but there was a time when a luxury vehicle used to be a beautifully designed dash with nice wood inlays and stitched leather
Real
and things,
metals, maybe.
and beautifully constructed analog gauges that had really pretty needles and nice backlighting and everything. And now it's just like, check out this screen.
Giant screen.
It goes all the way from the left mirror all the way to the right mirror.
Which brings me to a couple points. First of all, autonomous driving
Yeah.
has been a trend, which is not working out really well.
No, there's a couple of
Um,
recalls right now centered around some of the different autonomous driving driver assistance features.
Yeah, and it's one of those areas where ultimate like level 4 autonomy, where the driver can like take a nap or read a book, is still quite far away.
Yeah.
And we're in this
Really
we're in
difficult to
this
do.
time right now where we're trying to get there, but we're not there. So
Yeah.
there's different systems to help you drive or not help you drive at certain moments in time. So it's kind of a weird time. It's a similar time with battery technology, right? We have good batteries, but not great enough to enable, cost reduction
Yeah.
and range. So I don't want to spend too much time there because it's just going to take time, I guess. I'm
Yeah.
afraid.
And I think we're already at about an hour.
Are
Right,
we
Cole?
are we out of time?
Cole's telling us to wrap it up. He's playing the music for us to
But
walk off stage.
But here, I'm going to bring it to where we started. The reason why I chose the Kia Weekender concept
yeah.
van, it's because it combines several things. We talked about the GM truck we drove off road, the Ram trucks, the Ford trucks. They have long hoods. Visibility is poor, right? Long hoods. I mean, they're there to house a big engine, and that engine needs to have a giant radiator
And to look cool.
and to look powerful, right?
Yeah,
And,
modern trucks have these big square-jawed front ends that they do look substantial, they look tough, but it's also tough to see anything that you're driving over if you're on a trail.
okay,
which
then
is not my
then
favorite
you can
thing.
add cameras to it. But you and I just saw this. Cameras are helpful, but they flatten the image down.
And they also at the edges can, depending on the camera system, can distort things
Yeah,
pretty
they can
significantly.
distort. Yeah, they can distort things. But what about the forward control? What just changing the paradigm, right? If you can move the cabin forward, I don't know, if you can remove the engine, right? You can move the cabin forward. You have better visibility. You can rely on cameras less.
Yeah.
You can put more stuff inside because you have more space on the interior.
Possibly. Yeah.
That's the type of innovation I want.
Sure. It's very European because in Europe, a lot of
Semis are like that.
semis are like that. Even the trucks that you see cruising around, a flatbed or a landscaping truck or whatever it is a cab over design.
Or like a Sprinter van.
Yeah, they're
van design.
van-based
Yeah, van-based design.
setups. I think that would be a big transition for a lot of people here.
You mean like style-wise or like feeling-wise?
Style-wise, just everything, even the operation of it. Sometimes a cab over design, kind of being right above your front wheels as you're steering can be a little bit of a strange feeling.
It's an adjustment.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. But I think the perfect design is really the Buhanka.
Is it?
Well, it's been around since 1966, Case. Since 1966, this design has been around.
Is that because the Buhanka, like the great white shark, cannot be improved in its efficacy? Or is that because they don't want to pour money into improving it?
It's a little bit of both.
Is it a little bit of both, or is it more one than the other?
Well, it could have a slightly taller ceiling. It could have that. It
could have a couple things.
It's not perfect, but it's you could put a 4x8 sheet of plywood into a vehicle that will fit into any garage.
Well, then you're right. The design is perfect.
It is perfect.
If you can put plywood in it, it cannot be improved.
Okay. Exactly. So, well, let us know what you guys think, because
for sure,
I think more functional features. I think that's where innovation needs to focus. Like, for example, inverters, high-powered inverters, like F-150 hybrid, like the new Ram, like the new Toyota Trail Hunters.
Yeah.
Right. The Tacoma has a 2.4 kilowatt inverter system. The Ford F-150 hybrid has a 7.2 kilowatt. You could weld off of it. That's the innovation I want to see.
Yeah, that's a modern feature that is very useful and is really cool to see. Even some vehicles having, like a Tacoma Trail Hunter, having a compressor built into them. How great is that? If you get a flat tire and you've got the right tools with you, you could fix that right on the side of the road.
Rivian has a compressor too.
Yeah, exactly. So some things like that, I think, to your point, those are actually really useful, great features versus just having more screens.
Yeah, and also like electric pickups have covered lockable storage in the front.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really nice, because it could be rolling around your bed in the back, or if you don't have a tonneau cover, that stuff in your bed, is getting rained on or snowed on. Those are the type of stuff I really want to see.
Yeah. I don't mean to be super negative either. If you're out there and you absolutely love having more and more screens and bigger screens,
let us know.
Yeah, let us know.
Yeah.
It's not my personal thing, but maybe that's just me.
Well, when the truck drives itself, that's the time where you have a big screen.
I'm trying to be diplomatic.
That's fine. When the truck drives itself, then you and I can relax, recline, and then we can watch a movie or something on the big screen.
Yeah, like in that big BMW i7 or
yes,
whichever it was.
Yeah,
that
just
has
giant screen
literally
that pops down.
A full width.
Yes, in the back
of the car screen that folds down.
Yeah, we can do that. But until that happens, maybe we can put the money elsewhere. I would agree.
I'm with that. That sounds good to me.
Alrighty, well, thanks for joining us. Let us know what you think. If you've seen our new studio, let us know what you think of it. And our latest technology that we're using.
Yeah, the new setup that Jen has worked super hard on.
And Cole has worked. And
Cole has worked hard on this, and Ian's worked hard on it. So
yeah, we really appreciate that.
Yeah, awesome.
Thanks. We'll see you next week.